Hello and welcome to the Camo Matrix vlog or podcast number 5. In this episode, we'll be looking at some video poll results from the YouTube community page that I've got. We'll share some camo additions to the Camo Matrix, convert a couple of submitted deer vision or photos to deer vision from a viewer, and also discuss the Ozonics HD500 scent elimination unit. So first off, I'd like to say I'll continue rolling out the on-the-shelf camo comparisons like I have been in my recent videos with real tree and mossy oak and the true timber patterns that you can get at most stores. From the comments on YouTube and voting on YouTube, it looks like Realtree Edge is a strong contender for being one of the top all-around camos, especially something that's fairly available to everybody. Now, if you aren't aware, I normally add a poll to my YouTube community page, and on each video, you can see that you'll be able to vote for your favorite in that video Camo Showdown. So what I want to do is go over maybe the last 5 videos and look at how some of those tallied out with the votes once they were in there. For my most recent one, which we did Mossy Oak Obsession versus True Timber HTC Green, 84% of those voters thought True Timber HTC Green performed better, with only 11% voting for Obsession and 5% saying both performed about equally. We'll say that Obsession is very good for the green environments, but HTC Green may have a more shape breakup pattern than the Obsession would. It was a viewer requested video of First Light Cypher versus Bottomland. Cypher got about 70% of the vote, with Bottomland getting only about 20 and 10% saying that they performed equally. Now, I feel that Bottomland original from Mossy Oak would have gotten a bit more just because the shape breakup of Cypher just really dominated that particular video. And that's just simply because I think the original has a little more shape breakup than just regular Bottomland. Now, votes on the First Light Spectre versus Realtree Edge, it ended up being with 64%. So this is Spectre versus Realtree Edge. 64% of the voters thought that Realtree Edge performed better, where 28% chose to vote for Spectre, but with only 8% of voters saying that they performed equally. So that's a pretty big statement for Realtree Edge. I'm a fan of more micro and macro patterns, but this pattern, their coloring choices between the darks and the lights within that leaf and branch type pattern seem to be very effective, both close up and far away. Now, for the Realtree Edge versus True Timber Canis, Realtree Edge they end up pulling off 75% of the vote, where Canis only got 25%, and I guess they performed equally on that one. I would think that one of the comments was actually that Edge disappeared and they were kind of having trouble keeping track of it. And so what I'd like to mention here is that when you're looking at these videos where we have the Camo Showdown, don't necessarily look directly at them. Look away so that you're not focused in on them, and that's how they really are supposed to function. You got to think that the deer is, or where your prey is, walking through the woods, and they're not focusing in on you unless you've already been picked out. So don't look directly at it from time to time and see how well you can tend to lose it in your peripherals. Now, the Badlands approach versus approach FX. FX got 47% of the vote, where approach got 27%, and then 27% of voters felt that they performed equally. Now, between the two, both are very similar, where approach tends to have some green in it, and FX has replaced that green with some brown color, and they've opened it up a little bit more, so there's some bigger variations between dark and light that might hide that shape of a human better than regular approach would. Moving on to new camo that's being added to the Camo Matrix in the past several weeks. There is a camo pattern called Bracken Camo. They're actually out of Australia, and I've checked in here, and I believe that you can actually order them to be shipped to the U.S. They may actually have a warehouse here that has some of them. Pattern kind of reminds me of an updated version of Asio Bottomland Original. So when you look at it, it kind of looks like that Bottomland Original pattern. They could be worth checking out. And then there was Hidden, which has two patterns, which was Backwoods Exile and Arid Exile. They both have full range gear, based out of Ocala, Florida. The pattern seems to be a layered macro splatter pattern with some 3D blurring effects to it. So check those guys out. They're all on the Camo Matrix tool, which I'll say has now 117 different patterns from 50 different brands that you can see on 19 different backgrounds. So if you don't find one that I don't have, or if you find one that I don't have on there, send it to me, and we'll get the pattern up there for you to see. So thanks Mo for these submissions. He submitted both of those. So for viewer submissions, I've had these photos sent in from David. He's taken these photos in some public land in Washington State. David's wearing Scree Summit, and he sent these photos in that have been scaled to varying depths of view. We will take a look at both of these, and I'll try to do split screen so you can see David standing in this green. It looks like we've got a trail here with some good timber there. So you can see how in the human version he does, you can see him standing there in the background, and if we switch over, his coloring is really not changing because we're pretty far away. And if you can remember, Summit has some green in it that does convert over to yellow when we take a look at it. So with that version of Deer Vision, he's somewhat remaining the same. You can still kind of pick him out there. So if we zoom in on him, you can see how he looks in there. And with that human version versus the deer version, you kind of get into the method of no movement. So if you're standing there, if you start to compare him to how the trunks of those trees look, he's starting to look like he's part of the forest that way. So he's not necessarily blending into the foliage, but if he was standing closer to some of those trees, he may be indistinguishable between what's in the background and what might be human or what might be just something that's in the forest, not necessarily a predator. So we'll go to another one where we've kind of scaled back a little bit. This is the same idea where we're looking at the pattern, and we can pick it out because it does stand out from the background that he is standing in. But if there's no motion, he could be a fallen tree stump. It could be the stump from a fallen tree at that location. And if you're dealing with an animal that's not familiar with that area, since they do have good spatial awareness and they don't necessarily recognize that something is different, if you're without movement, then they're not going to see you there. You're going to look like part of that environment. And then, of course, here's one from way far away. So you could almost be wearing, anything that's going to be blending into the background or part of the background, and it really wouldn't matter what it was from this distance, but you could just kind of see that little mark in there. But if we're talking about rifle shot, this might be 40 yards away, 40, 50 yards away. So at that point, it's not a good bow shot range for most of us, but being able to be prepared and set as something's coming your way, you're not going to be very noticed. So let's move on to the HD500 scent elimination ozone generator by Ozonics. The HD500 is supposed to produce a constant stream of ozone that destroys human scent. And I'll be using it throughout this season and seeing what the results are. I'm pretty excited about it. I'll be using it this season and sharing my results. So this is kind of what's in the box. This is the unit itself, along with some mounting hardware and some charging cradles for the battery. It can have a remote for it, and you can also use your phone to control it with an app. Now the app gives you temperature, wind direction, wind speed, humidity, barometric pressure, sunrise and sunset of the area that you're in, along with your coordinates. So you can monitor this thing and turn it on and off with your phone or with the remote. The unit does have several settings. It has a standard, a boost, and hyper boost mode, and I guess that's depending on how quickly you want it to work in that area that you're in. And it also has some scent elimination dry wash settings for your clothes. So if you had some of their dry wash bags or one of their locker systems, you can place your clothes in them, and it should the ozone should eliminate those smells that are on them. Now they state that if you place the unit to operate in a downwind fashion from where your hunting location is, that the ozone generator it'll bind with the human scent molecules in the air and destroy them, making your scent undetectable. So that's a good thing for hunters, especially if you're always hunting the wind, and the wind may not necessarily be the best position for you to be in. So this might be a good thing. So, and there's been a question that's been brought to my attention about lung safety. So Ozonics states that some people have mild reactions to ozone, like watery eyes or lightheadedness. And they say that their units are built to the federal safety standards set by OSHA and the EPA. And I've read some studies on ozone effects with the lungs, which are mostly conducted indoors, and the effects are usually that of getting like a sunburn on your lungs. So I'm kind of viewing it as though I'm not going to be placing this to where I'm breathing what it is producing. I'm going to be placing it to where it is projecting away from me downwind. So that will kind of be, I'm kind of looking at it as though, I don't take my lawnmower and bring it in the house and start my lawnmower. Then I would obviously have some effects from that exhaust. But if you use your lawnmower outside and you're in motion and the wind's blowing it away from you, then you're probably going to be okay. So I'm going to approach the ozone generated by this machine as something that is blown away from me rather than something that is blown in my face and I'm inhaling it. So whether or not they say, some people have mild reactions to ozone and some people don't, I'm still going to treat it as though I don't necessarily want to inhale what, this machine or my lawnmower might produce. So with the unit, I'll be sharing it with you throughout this season. Hopefully it increases my interactions this year. And I do have a perfect place to try it out because I've got a little hole that my scent seems to collect in, and I get kind of blown every single time I'm in there. But it's a great location because it's a really high traffic area. So if you're curious about the unit, check out the link above over here or look down in the description. So for the future, be on the lookout for the new Ghillie and 3D Leafy Suit videos that I'll be doing in the field, and request any camo comparisons that you wish to see down in the comments. So till next time, happy hunting, and remember, the best camo is to remain still and be quiet.